Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello, and welcome to the Senior Resources Show. My name is Christine Cary, Director of the Town of Colonie Senior Resources Department, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Renee Benson, Executive Director of the Catholic Charities Caregiver Support Services. Welcome, Renee.
Thank you, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks, and I'm so glad that you were able to come on and be my guest on this half hour, because caregiving support services are so critical, not only to the seniors, but for their loved ones who are providing assistance to them. What I find often is that caregivers don't always know where to begin, how to access services, and even what's available out there in the community. So I'm hoping that you could tell me a little bit about your agency and the types of work that you do and the clients that you serve.
Wow, thanks, Chris. This is a great opportunity, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
And giving me this opportunity. I think you're right. I think there's a couple of challenges for families that are taking care of their loved ones, especially if they're trying to take care of them at home, and they often are confused where to start. I think that's a tricky question for folks. But let me tell you, like as you said, a little bit about the agency.
Mm-hmm.
Catholic Charities Caregiver Support Services is a not-for-profit organization.
Mm-hmm.
Our agency of Caregiver Support Services started about 21 years ago, 1987. And we really started off with the intention just to help people that are taking care of their elderly and frail loved ones at home.
Mm-hmm.
Then about 10 years into providing services for the seniors, particularly respite services so that their loved ones could take a break and be able to maintain caring for their loved ones at home,
Mm-hmm.
we started getting some phone calls from seniors who said that they were not only trying to take care of, that they needed help and support, but not just for taking care of their elderly, frail loved ones, but that they were also taking care of their grandchildren.
Okay.
And we got enough phone calls where we realized there was a service gap for relatives raising children.
Mm-hmm.
And about 10 years ago, we started a kinship family program, which provides support services for relatives raising other relatives' children. And most of those are grandparents. We do have some other relatives raising children, but most of them are grandparents raising grandchildren. So currently, our agency, which is located primarily it's located in Albany, but it provides services in a number of other counties. But we have two primary programs, the Elder Caregiving Program and the Kinship Caregiving Program. So your viewers could easily get help with either of those populations, whether they're taking care of their elderly and frail loved ones or whether they're taking care of grandchildren.
Or taking care of both at the same time.
And that happens also.
sure.
We often have people taking care of both, a sandwich generation that you might call. So we're trying to meet the needs for both of those populations. Now, our kinship caregiving program is, again, it started in Albany County, and fairly recently, a few years ago, we started providing some services in Rensselaer County, and just this year we're starting to serve Schenectady County as well.
And what kind of service do you provide through that? Is it mostly counseling or information?
Right. Well, it's interesting. What we did is, because we had the elder caregiving program first, we modeled the kinship caregiving program after it. Now, the elder caregiving program we offer in 14 counties. Albany, Columbia, Delaware, Fulton, Greene, Herkimer, Montgomery, Otsego, Rensselaer, Saratoga, Schenectady, Schoharie, Warren, and Washington counties. And in those counties, we offer respite services for the caregiver in the elder caregiving program and information and assistance. In the kinship caregiving program, we also offer respite and information and assistance. In the elder caregiving program, we offer also support groups, counseling, and social and recreational activities, as in Albany County specifically. And in the kinship care program, we offer those same additional services, the counseling, the support groups, the social work services and social and recreational activities for the grandparents or relatives and the children. But again, only in the 3 counties, Albany, Rensselaer, and Schenectady. So it's kind of exciting that we offer this sort of package setup where anybody can call us for information assistance from those 14 counties and get some information about what's available in their community and get some questions answered. We can offer them planned respite for the elder caregiving for all of those counties as well. And again, the social work services, the support groups, and social and recreational activities in a little smaller region.
Can you talk a little bit about the respite program? I know as a community social worker, I've made many referrals to the program, and I know many families have been able to get that very needed rest that they need because of your program. And explain a little bit about what respite means.
Sure.
And what the program provides.
Sure. The respite portion is the core of the program. It's how we started off. So that's probably why you know about it so well.
Right.
And it's probably how we're known best.
I think so.
Yeah. In the elder caregiving program, and that's what I'm going to spend most of my time talking about now, I'll talk about respite from that perspective. It's a little bit different than with the kinship care program.
Okay.
In the elder caregiving program, if you're caring for a parent or a spouse or an elderly loved one, and you're trying to figure out how do you do it all? How do you do it all? A lot of times you're trying to still hold a job, trying to take care of your regular daily affairs, and then at the same time trying to take care of the financial, social, emotional, medical needs for the elderly person that you're caring for, and you can get pretty burnt out.
Sure.
A lot of times caregivers tell me that their life calendar has shifted to be whatever their mother's life calendar was. Doctor's appointments, transporting them to different engagements that they have to do for their mom.
That's true.
Yeah, and it's very challenging. So you need to take a break.
Yeah.
In order to be able to take good care of the loved one that you're taking, that you're caring for, you need to be able to take care of yourself. So you first try to consider the resources that you have. Maybe you have family members that you can ask for help with, so you could take a break. But a lot of people in our society today live pretty much without family around them.
Right.
So they don't have anybody to turn to. In those situations, you can call our phone number.
Great. And what is your phone number?
It's 518-449-2001.
Okay.
And we also have a website, which is www.cccaregivers, and there's an S at the end of that, .org.
Okay.
And if you give us a phone call, you'll talk with either probably Helen or Mary or one of our intake coordinators, and they'll take some information to find out what your needs are. When you're looking for respite, what kind of respite do you need? Do you need a few hours every week? Do you need a daycare, an adult daycare, a social model daycare, a medical model daycare? Do you need to have some overnight stays? Whatever the arrangement is. Our agency subcontracts with over 40 different providers. In Colonie specifically, there's a social daycare program called Bright Horizons, and it was recently in the news.
And that's located at the Beltrone Living Center.
Absolutely, through Senior Services. But there are also other medical models that are not right in Colonie that we could hook people up with if they need a medical model. We could hook people up with overnight stays in an adult facility if necessary.
I had a family that desperately needed respite, and I thought what was terrific about your agency is she was awarded the resources to be able to take a vacation, but that you did all the legwork.
That's what we do.
That is critical for caregivers to know, A, they're going to get the financial support to be able to put their loved one in respite, but you made all the arrangements for for the family to be able to take that vacation. And I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Chris. Caregivers are stressed. Their lives are already chaotic with all of the different responsibilities placed on them. So what we do is once we understand what the need is, we take the information, we take the contact information, and then our people start reaching out to the providers in the community to find the best match.
And I know it works well because I've been on the other side of that when I'm working with the families, trying to make those arrangements. That's terrific.
Yeah.
Now, where do you get your funding from to be able to provide these wonderful services?
Sure. Actually, our funding comes from a variety of sources, and I can talk to you a little bit about that. We have some subcontracts through the County Office for the Aging. One of them is with the Albany County Office for the Aging, so we're very appreciative of their funding. We also have a contract with the New York State Office for the Aging. And something really exciting this past year that contract did for us was provide us with some additional funding to do emergency respites.
Oh, that's terrific.
So we had one case not too long ago where somebody who was taking care of his wife with Alzheimer's, and she could not be left alone. Unfortunately, he had a death, and it was his daughter, and she lived at a distance, and he wanted to go down to the funeral for his own daughter, but could not leave his wife, and didn't feel that he could take her either. So within the notice was in the morning, and the funeral was the next day, and between the time that we got the phone call and the time that the funeral happened, we had arranged for a week stay, I believe it was, at an adult home, so that the loved one could leave his wife in a safe place and still get to his daughter's funeral.
And not worry about his wife.
Right.
And I think for family members who think potentially down the road that they're going to have to consider adult home placement or assisted living or nursing home, that by allowing their loved one to spend a few days in respite or a week, whatever the case may be, gives the family kind of an indicator of how their loved one will do in that environment and that change. So I think always if you have the opportunity to allow somebody to, get that respite and for the loved one to spend a little time in a facility, tells the family a lot about how well they did in that environment and what they need to start to think about in the future if they can't keep them at home.
Absolutely. A lot of people use the program to help introduce the concept of another place for care. And even if that's not going to be a permanent place, it's an opportunity for a family to assess how that goes, which is very important. I do want to say a couple of quick little things. You had asked me about the funders, and I certainly don't want to forget anybody, and there certainly are a few different pools that we get funding from, and I'm grateful for all of it. We also, of course, a good percentage of our budget comes from donations as well, and we just recently had an event. It was just this past Thursday, which was a fundraiser for us. But at this event, we recognized our local public broadcasting station, WMHT, as well as the Guardian Society for this whole month of caregiving events that have been going on and heightening awareness around them, around those events. There's funding coming to us from small grants, and people like the Guardian Society and Community Foundation, United Way in particular, has been a consistent funder for us. So there's a lot of resources out there, and we're very appreciative for all of them.
And I do think, that funders do see how critical it is that we support caregivers. When you look at the staggering costs of long-term care, if anything that can be done to support caregivers in their role of caring for their loved ones, and I'm sure you hear this often, particularly from spouses, that they don't see themselves as a caregiver, they see themselves as a spouse. And it's oftentimes identifying that they do need some assistance goes, unseen because they don't see themselves in that role of needing caregiver support services because that's what they signed up for when they said I do how many years ago. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But on the other hand, we do hear many times that the well spouse, something happens and they become ill because they never did reach out and get the support or assistance. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. The well spouses, as you put it, often don't take good care of themselves. In fact, some research has shown that caregivers usually have very poor health because they're so busy caring for their loved one that they're neglecting their own needs for good nutrition. Sleep is a big one, and exercise, of course, are all the self-care things that your mother taught us, taught you, and my mother taught me. All those things that we've often learned are important. We neglect about ourselves when we're giving care to others. And as anybody who's ever flown has ever heard the stewardess or steward saying to you, when the air masks drop, you know, put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help the child next to you.
Right.
It's the same thing. We have to take care of ourselves to be able to take care of others. So it's really important for the caregivers to remember to take care of themselves. There's the physical aspects that I was just talking about, the eating and the sleeping and self-care and exercise. But there's also the emotional aspects of it, because the stress really can destroy a body if you're not taking care of it.
Right.
Caregivers tell me that a lot of times they feel very isolated, like they're all alone. So socialization is also very important. So you can't forget the social and emotional aspects of your self-care.
Yeah, it's so important.
To do that, our agency offers a couple of solutions or some ways to help. And they include support groups. We have support groups the second Wednesday of each month at the Christ the King Church in Guilderland, and we have support groups also in Rensselaer County, and we have for the elder care. We also have support groups for our kinship care, and certainly if you call the office or check out our website, you can find out more about that. We also have telephone support if somebody needs some support but can't get to the support group, and we have a social worker who will give some support over the telephone.
And I think that's
basis.
critical, because I don't think caregivers can say, okay, I'm going to free up 2 hours on the second Tuesday of the month to get to a support group. My experience is when a caregiver or a spouse needs help, they need it now.
That's it.
And to be able to pick up the phone, and I know from the Town of Colonie Senior Resources Department, our caseworkers work individually with caregivers and spouses and adult children on a daily basis, that knowing that you can pick up the phone and help is there is really critical for someone to know that they're not walking alone, that even if they just need to vent about what a bad day they're having, or that, you know, they can't get their loved one to get up and get dressed, or to do the activities of daily living that now are so difficult, that it's okay to pick up the phone and just vent if that's what you need to do. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not only about venting, sometimes it's also about celebrating. One of the things that we offer, we try to do it 3-4 times a year, are celebrations for the caregivers.
Oh, that's great.
Where we'll have a luncheon or a dessert opportunity where people can get together and just chat. We had a coffee clutch going for a while there. And what's wonderful about this is all these people come together and have their coffee or tea together and are eating a pastry or something healthy, or and talking about what they've learned that's been successful, as well as sometimes venting, so that people can pick up skills that other people, may have found sooner than them. And sometimes they bring their loved ones to these events too as a social outing. We had we brought some entertainment to one event recently. We called it Teas and Tunes, and we had a caregiver come out, and she brought her partner with her, even though he is ailing, but he was well enough to come to the event, and she felt safe bringing him because she knew everybody in the room
understood
and
accepted.
Exactly. And she was in tears. She was so happy and joyful about the opportunity to get out of the house.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they don't get out for months at a time or more.
And that her partner was in an unconditionally loved environment, that it didn't matter. It was like the old days again.
Exactly.
I find that a lot. And we also in the Town of Colonie have a monthly support group, TLC, Tender Loving Caregivers, on the second Tuesday of each month and the third Tuesday of each month during the day. And I am always pleased at the end of the night when I watch everybody walking out together, that people are in the parking lot talking and exchanging phone numbers and making those connections, so that until we meet next month, they've developed bonds with other people who completely understand what it's like to be living with an 85-year-old father or your spouse or whomever it may be who is demented or may have, physical disabilities, and it's a challenge every day, and to know that you're not, there's someone out there that you can talk to that understands completely.
Exactly. That's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly right. People are grateful to know that they're not alone, grateful to have friends that they can share with, because so often when a caregiver is in that mode of taking care of their loved one, they feel like all they're doing to their old friends is boring them to death about complaints about their current life situation.
Right.
And that's not where they want to be.
No.
So they often self-isolate. And being in this environment of either a support group or a social environment that's made up of other caregivers gives a person that opportunity. And Chris, something else that comes up a lot of times is people ask me this question about, do you have to be Catholic to go to the Catholic Charities Caregiver Support Services? And the answer, if you don't mind my taking this opportunity to say, is no. We accept everybody, regardless of whatever their race, religion, or lifestyle is. Everyone is welcome. This is not about the religious faith. This is about caregiving, and that's the priority here.
Oh, that's important for people to know that. What kind of recommendations can you give to caregivers? I know we talked about taking care of yourself a little bit and some of the other issues related to caregiving, but as individuals are looking at their own situation today, what would your advice to be to folks who are thinking it's time to get some help?
Great. That's a really good question. I think that we've been touching all about it during this conversation. A lot of times in our society, we try not to ask for help. I don't know, I really don't know why we're not so accepting of asking for help.
Sign of weakness, maybe?
Sign of weakness.
You should be able to do it all. I think I hear
like
that a lot.
There's this stereotype. We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We're independent souls here in America, and we don't ask for help. But the reality is that all of us are vulnerable at any given point in time. And whether your loved one needs your help because there's been an accident and they're suddenly incapacitated, or whether or not this was a slow growing thing where you started off just helping them get to the grocery store, but it progressed and got worse slowly. Whatever the situation is, it's important for you to think it through and realize that you don't have to go it alone. Learn how to ask for help and be accepting of that. Don't beat yourself up about it. There's no guilt here about asking for help. Actually, it's the other way. If you don't ask for help, you're going to burn out and you're not going to be able to keep up with what you need to do. And you know it yourself from all the work that you've done, that the people that are able to sustain that level of giving of themselves to care for another, are the people that look around for resources in their community, in their family, and try to put the pieces together in a way that they can sustain it,
right,
and not exhaust themselves. And I'm sure you've seen it. I know I've seen it. We have caregivers that end up in the hospital because they've neglected themselves. And at that point, then what happens to the loved one?
Right. A routine for the caregiver is as important many times as it is for the person with the disease. I had one lady one time tell me that she was caring for her husband at home in his 80s, and she was in her 80s as well, and she couldn't ask anybody for help. She took care of him, she maintained the house, she did the grocery shopping, she did everything she needed to do, and she was exhausted. But she couldn't ask for help. So what we decided to do was take a clear jar and put it on the table, and on little pieces of paper she wrote what her needs were, whether it was to have the screens washed, or for someone to visit with Dad, or to run some errands, and we wrote them all down. She put them in her jar, and then people understood when they came, if they wanted to do something to help, she didn't have to ask. They just reached in the jar and pulled out a piece of paper, and that's what she needed that day.
That's brilliant.
It was a wonderful, and it became a wonderful tool for her. And when friends would come to visit, she didn't have to say, would you take the garbage down or put the screens in the window? People could just take a job. And she said, and I didn't have to ask anymore, and it was terrific. So
see, this is a great idea.
Yeah.
This is a great idea. It takes away the a challenge of asking for help. That's a great idea. And so half of it is getting the courage to ask, and the other half is who do you ask?
Right, right.
And a lot of people don't know where to begin on that. On the once they have the courage, on the who do you ask or where do you go? And there's a lot of help available. Albany County is rich, thank goodness, in its resources, and people should feel comfortable in utilizing them. Our services, the respite services, the support services, the information referral services, the social work services, the recreational activities are all free. There's no charge for these. So if you don't ask about them, how would you, there's nothing to get in the way.
Right.
People should be going and finding out about these services. One thing you can do is the New York State Office for the Aging has a toll-free number. It's a 1-800-342-9871. And seniors can call, or people taking care of seniors can call and find out what resources are available right in their local community. Look at the number for their local area aging office and find out what resources are available right there and get some help.
That's great. And I think for town residents, I think they have the extra bonus of having the Town of Colonie Senior Resources, which is an information and assistance. It's a social work office. There's social workers on staff, and the services are right here. And it's really the starting point for services in the Town of Colonie, whether it be for recreational or nutritional needs or health care or financial and benefit counseling, whatever somebody might need. It's the first number to start with, I think, in the Town of Colonie, and that's 459-5051.
That's
Senior
great.
Resources.
That's great. Yeah, if you know the number for your local, like Senior Resources, that's the number to use. If you don't know what your local one is, use the state number, and they'll get you to the local number.
Exactly.
So either way works. That's great.
And I know just from the years of working with your agency that when agencies pool their resources and pool their capabilities, we're able to do so much more collectively than we are individually to make things a little bit easier for for the caregiver and ultimately for the loved one.
Well, that's what it's all about right now. With the population booming in seniors and the population of 80 and up living longer and getting larger too. This is no longer a luxury. This is a necessity.
Absolutely.
Not only for Colonie, and not only for New York State, but for the nation as a whole.
Absolutely. The 85 plus population is the fastest growing segment in our population.
Right.
And in the Town of Colonie, we have the largest senior population in the county. So it's important that we have the services available, and it's important that we have the collaborations with other community agencies, because it's impossible to do it alone.
100% behind you on that. I agree completely.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of things that caregivers need to remember, and based on just what you just said statistically, they are not alone, and there is help out there.
Yeah.
And it's definitely worth their effort to get the help. There's no guilt or embarrassment in asking for help, and people should know that they shouldn't wait until the crisis happens to seek that help.
Right.
They should be planful and go for it.
But, many do wait for the crisis, and that's okay. We certainly encourage people to start planning ahead. When you start to see some changes in mom or dad or in your spouse, that's the time to start at least gathering information.
Correct.
So that you have it in the event that things do change. But my advice often to caregivers, and you'll probably agree with this, is to be gentle on yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Be gentle with yourself, and you're going to be fine.
That's right. Reach out for the help. It's there.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of exciting things happening for this population, and I think people, as they hear this through your show or through other places, are going to feel more and more confident about what they can do.
Yeah, well, reaching out is the most important thing that we can do. So if you would, in closing, just remind people of what your phone number is and and your name so that they can access you.
Sure. It's Catholic Charities, Caregiver Support Services, and I'm Renee Benson. I'm the Executive Director. And if they need some help with either elder caregiving services or kinship care services, they can call 518-449-2001. That's 518-449-2001. And the website, again, is www.cccaregivers.org. Thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome. And for any other information that someone needs, they can always contact the Senior Resources Department at 459-5051. Thank you very much, Renee, for joining me today. I think this information is very helpful for all of our viewers, and I appreciate you taking your time to be here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me today on Senior Resources Show. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.